Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be seeing if the LG 34GP83A-B is still any good in 2022 going into 2023. If at any point during the video you want to check out the GP83A-B, there are Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. But let's jump into it. Now, this monitor was released back in the fall of 2020, and today we're going to see if almost 2 years after its launch, if it is still worth it in the end of 2022 and the beginning and middle of 2023 probably. Now, the way I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be reviewing this monitor with my current monitor standards that I use with every new monitor that I review, while also talking about my overall ownership and daily driving this monitor as my main monitor over the last 2 years. And firstly, I do want to say this is and was and has been my daily driver over the last 2 years, meaning that I have not found a single monitor that does, well, everything better than this one. All right, firstly, this is the common form factor for ultra-wides. It's slightly curved, not overly curved, so if you're sensitive to extreme curves, this will seem flat to you. It's very, very slightly curved. This is 34 inches with a resolution of 3440 by 1440p, ultra-wide 1440p. This is still the most common size and resolution for new monitors coming out. That's what the very expensive QD OLED from Alienware. That's still the resolution and screen size of that one as well. Now, as for panel type, this is using LG's Nano IPS panel type, which I believe was made by LG in 2019 and then introduced into a lot of its lineup in 2020 and 2021. They're still currently making Nano IPS panels. In fact, the GQ950, I believe, and the GQ850 that they just released a few days ago or a few weeks ago were also Nano IPS panels. I believe that. I might be wrong. So all of that still checks out and is great by today's standards. Now, the refresh rate hits 144 Hz natively, but then has a factory overclock to go to 160 Hz. This still does match competition well above this price range. Again, comparing this to the ultra-wide QD OLED from Alienware, that has a refresh rate of 175 Hz. So we're only looking at a 15 Hz difference there, which is, well, you're not going to notice it. For variable refresh rate, this has FreeSync Premium, and it is NVIDIA certified G-Sync compatible, which is great. Overall, had no issues with this. You might have issues if you have extremely low frames, but I'm talking below 40 FPS. But above that, you're not going to have any issues. I never did. No screen tearing, nothing like that. Now, how does this compare to modern monitors of this price range? Well, I would assume that the next generation of this monitor specifically would probably have FreeSync Premium Pro and maybe some better HDR, but let's get into that. And that is the brightness. Let's move on to it. This is a common area where monitors can show their age because recently we've seen an influx of monitors that have much higher brightnesses, which I love because I love very bright monitors. However, this monitor is rated for 400 nits, which is good on its own. Not great though. However, we all know at this point, this way outperforms this with a 100% window, getting close to 500 nits. At some points, I've gotten over 500 nits. And again, that is in SDR content. But realistically, you're gonna be looking around 470, 480 nits in typical SDR content when you're just doing something normal. Don't have your settings all crazy. Now, as for HDR, there's some good and there's some bad. Firstly, it works great with most games. It works great even with Windows. So if you are just having HDR on a lot of the time because you're just gaming in HDR, but you know, sometimes you're browsing Windows, you can just leave HDR on. A lot of monitors have problems with Windows and kind of just washing everything out. That's very common actually, but this one is, well, it works incredibly well. Windows doesn't look crazy, and then games look great. It does struggle with the bright highlights. It does make them nice and bright, but it washes a lot of it out. So you lose quite a bit of detail in those brighter areas. That being said, with the color gamut, which is actually pretty good, and that enhanced brightness, it does just give you a little bit more vibrancy. So if you're not crazy into HDR, if you're not gonna be like, that HDR is not good enough for me. So if you're one of those people, probably not the HDR experience for you, but if you're just someone that's like, I want a little bit more vibrancy in games, and the games are optimized for HDR, like Battlefield, this works fantastic, and it's exactly what you want for that. But again, compared to today's standards, which there's been a lot of new monitors coming out with very good HDR performance, high contrast ratios, which this obviously as an IPS panel does not have. So you're just not gonna get those super deep blacks here. But if you're looking for HDR performance that is slightly better than SDR in terms of vibrancy, and that's all you're worried about. You're not gonna get those deep blacks. This is going to be good for you. Over my time in using this, I typically left it in SDR, but in games like Battlefield, I did switch over into HDR because it just looked a little bit prettier, more vibrant. All right, but let's talk about the colors now. This is pretty important because I actually use this for video editing. Most of the videos that you would see on my other channel, Consumer Tech Review, where most of them were edited on this monitor. Many of the videos on this channel were edited on the review that each video was done on because I wanted to test it that way. I use every monitor as my daily when I test them. So not on this channel, but on Consumer Tech Review, I edited basically all of the videos on that monitor. So the colors are pretty good here, covering 98% of the DCI-P3 color space. As well, this is factory calibrated, so the color accuracy out of the box is very good, especially when compared to other companies that do that. Now, in this day and age, color calibration just over the last 2 years in gaming monitors has gotten significantly better. More monitors are having very good color calibration from the factory. Previously, LG was one of the only ones to do that at a lower price point. And when I say lower, I mean sub $1,000. Now, if you do want to do photo and video editing, you can absolutely do it on this. That's what I use this for, as well as gaming the other amount of time. Now, this can also output 10 bits of color when the factory overclock is off. If you do have the factory 160 Hz overclock on, you cannot output 10 bits of color, but again, not a big problem, not an issue for me. I typically left this in 144 Hz, outputting 10 bits of color. Even by today's standards and this price point, this is very good. Now, the contrast ratio is typical for IPS panels. This has a 1,000:1 contrast ratio. There's no local dimming here. There's nothing that's going to enhance those blacks anymore. Still, by today's standards, I think I've been hearing murmurs of mini LED lit 4K, 32-inch, tons of local dimming zones. I've been hearing murmurs of that. But still, at this point, we haven't seen that. And I think if we do start to see that in your common 16:9 aspect ratios, like 27-inch and 32 inches, it's going to take probably a year for that to come to an ultra-wide form factor. I probably would not wait for that to come if that's what everyone else is waiting for. I wish that it would come tomorrow. When that day comes, it'll be a great day. But for now, a 1,000:1 contrast ratio is what you're gonna get unless you're gonna move to a V8 or an OLED. Okay, but let's move on to gaming performance, probably the most important. Response time, ghosting, and input lag. Now, I just wanna say this right off the bat. Gaming on this is absolutely fantastic. This gives you an absolutely beautiful picture. Are there things that I wish that this did? Yes, I wish that it was a glossy screen. As far as brightness, nah, it's pretty much perfect with how bright it is. Maybe 50 nits brighter. HDR performance could be better, but overall, this is a fantastic package. And once you hear the price that is current, it starts to make a lot of sense. Okay, but this hits a 1 millisecond gray to gray response time. How does that translate into ghosting? Well, it's exceptionally low. Now, this is not the lowest we've seen. LG's new 32-inch GQ950 was the lowest ghosting I think I've ever seen on an IPS panel before, probably matched with the Gigabyte M32U, but this one actually has lower ghosting than the also newly released LG 32GQ850-B. And that one had already exceptionally low ghosting, so this is kind of right between the 32GQ850 and the 32GQ950. So by today's standards, monitors that cost $900 to $1,300, which is more expensive than the base price of this monitor when it came out, well, that's exceptionally low. And then you have that inside of an ultra-wide form factor, which is just more limited buying scenarios. This is very good. Now, input lag. This is also exceptionally low. Not just exceptionally low for the time period. It's exceptionally low for right now. This is competitive level input lag. It's incredibly low. So the game performance overall, you don't really compromise image quality except for that contrast ratio. Input lag is incredibly low. Ghosting is incredibly low. And you still get great colors. The overall image quality is fantastic. The PPI is still very good. It's basically what a 1440p 27-inch monitor would be. And you can actually still run games at a high refresh rate because it's not 4K with those extra pixels on the side. But yeah, gaming on this is absolutely fantastic. Even by modern standards, even when I'm used to trying out and testing and using every day the newest, the best, and the greatest monitors, this one is still so good. It just hits every point for me. It can video edit. It does tasks just like typing away perfectly. It does that great, but then it also games incredibly well, but it's also something I can edit on. This is just the sweet spot for, well, basically everything for me personally. Okay, but the menu system, this is classic LG. Now this is, at this point, the last generation menu system, which is basically the same, but the graphics are just not quite as pretty. This is still the best menu system when compared to everyone else, Alienware, Dell, Scepter, all of them. However, it's just behind LG's new menu system, but overall, not a deal breaker for me. It is controlled using a single joystick. Everything is incredibly easy to use. There's no learning curve. It's all very quick and very fast and very simple to learn. All right, moving on to Vesa Compatibility. This is compatible with 100mm by 100mm Vesa mounts. I've also mounted this like 10 or 12 times. And even after mounting that, never had any issues with like the display, just because you're putting it in weird situations a lot of the time and picking it up and stuff. I never had anything problems, like I never hurt the display or anything like that, so that kind of adds to its reliability as well. All right, but let's talk about ports. They're still good by today's standards, which is impressive. This has one DisplayPort 1.4, two HDMI 2.0s, one USB Type-B upstream, and then two USB Type-A downstreams, and then a 3.5mm audio out. Now, the only thing that we really see here that is kind of showing its age is HDMI 2.0 rather than 2.1. However, this is an ultra-wide. You're not gonna be hooking consoles up to this, so that's not an issue. And then the only other thing is the headphone jack is perfectly fine how it is, but the new LG, specifically the LG monitors, are using this DTS headphone export. Not a deal breaker for me at all, so the ports are actually holding up quite nicely. All right, standard build quality is good here. This has height, tilt, and a small amount of rotation just to level it. Now, like I said, the build quality and fit and finish is good, but compared to LG's newer stand and build quality overall, which is very, very good, that's really on Alienware's level. The new stuff is, this stuff is still good and it's still premium, but it's not quite as good as the new stuff. But again, this is not a major factor for me at all. All right, but let's move on to definitely the most important section of the entire video, and that is price and value. Over the time since this went on sale in fall 2020, we have almost never seen this go on sale. Throughout its lifespan, this has been at $800 and people have been buying it up. Early on, this was out of stock and you could not get it all the time. But since really 2021, we've seen this in stock solidly for most of the year. However, it has kept its $800 price tag, which is not at all too much for this monitor. In fact, they probably could have sold this for $1,000 and people still would have bought it. However, at this point in time, right now, I've seen it go on sale, I think 2 or 3 times at this point, and it's currently on sale for $649. That price is insane. Now, that is the current price on Amazon. Check the Amazon links below to see if it's still on sale, because at that price, well, it's an insane buy. If contrast ratio is not a priority for you, and if you're looking at an IPS panel, it's just not. So if you are looking for an IPS panel that can really do everything really good, well, this is the best monitor that you can buy. In my personal opinion, this is the best buy of any monitor out there. I am an ultra-wide master race. If I had one monitor, it would be an ultra-wide. If I had one panel type, it would be an IPS. So if you also are that kind of person, this is the best monitor you can literally buy. The amount of value that you get, the amount of things that you get inside of this monitor that are incredibly premium for a price of now $649, which is insane, because that's what some VA ultra-wides, like more budget ultra-wides, they come close to that price. That's ridiculous. So overall, do I recommend this monitor? Well, absolutely yes. If you want an IPS and you want an ultra-wide, this is the one to get. Again, if you want to check it out, there are Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. I've been wanting to do this video. We're talking about in 2022 and 2023. This is a great monitor. It's an amazing pickup. And at this price point, it's not something where you're gonna be worried about what are they gonna release next. Because chances are when LG or other competition does release a new ultra-wide that's going to best this, it's going to be quite a bit more expensive. I would expect in the $1,500 price point, maybe $1,300 in response to Alienware's Quantum Dot OLED. All right, but this was Type-C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.